If you're like clear on what matters and you pour yourself into it and it's bringing you love and inspiration, then the actions just kind of take care of themselves. And that gives me the results that I'm looking for in my life. On the other side, when I'm engaged in actions that are a take, that are draining me, that are not fulfilling me, that's when I pause and look at my calendar and change things up, because then I'm out of balance.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to MYYT, where you are learning to level up your yoga teaching one masterful class at a time. If you listen really closely, you can probably hear some baby breathing, baby cooing in the background. Baby Finn is joining the podcast for this intro. He, at the time of this recording, is only 5 months, and I'm sitting here. I have spit up all over my pants. I'm wearing a bathrobe and it's 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and I feel like I haven't been able to accomplish nearly as much as I aspired to today. I bring that up to tell you that it's okay to take action, even if it feels like messy action. I'm in the 2-week countdown from leaving for Tulum, where I'm about to facilitate my first yoga retreat of the year. And I'm so excited, but at the same time, I'm also a little overwhelmed with the task of traveling, like flying the first time with a 5-month-old baby. So my Amazon cart is full of things like lightest travel strollers, car seat covers, pack and plays, bottle warmers, like all of this stuff that it feels like I need to fly to Mexico, host a retreat successfully with a baby. So if you're a mom out there, I know I'm always asking for you guys' suggestions and advice and recommendations. I would love it if you would reach out and let me know how you do it. How do you maintain this great balancing act? And that's actually what Anthony and I talk about in this episode, is sustaining work and life and finding that perfect balance of managing it all. This episode is jam-packed of yogic wisdom. It's a treasure trove of actionable advice. With that said, though, it got a little long-winded, so I want to cut the true story submission for this week just so that we can dive right into the episode. But I do want to hear from you. So if you have a true story, please head to the show notes, click on the link, tell me your story, and I'd love to share it in the following episodes. This week, Anthony and I talk about how to seamlessly thread your life stories into your yoga teachings. I tease and tell him that it seems like he has Midas's golden touch, meaning that everything that he touches somehow seems to turn to gold. So he shares with us some of his secrets and how to make all of your life's pursuits successful. We talk about the role of clear values and the importance of boundaries in your yoga teaching. We chat about the yogic concept of Mudita and the importance of celebrating the success of others within the yoga community, divine reciprocity explained, and the effects on societal improvement, navigating comparison and how to distinguish healthy and unhealthy forms of comparison, the fascinating difference between judgment and discernment. And in my opinion, the juiciest part of this episode is where he shares his super simple formula for theming classes and the 3 filters that he uses to distill life experiences into motivational material. He puts me in the hot seat and performs almost a mini masterclass where he helps me turn my unmedicated home birth story into an inspiring story that everybody can benefit from. We end the episode by talking about the keys for maintaining the work-life balance. If you are seeking guidance on how to use your life stories in your classes, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. Hey yogis, MAKENZIE Fly here, mom, yogapreneur, teacher trainer, retreat leader, and your guide to master your yoga teaching. This podcast is your weekly dose of actionable wisdom and candid chats with industry experts. Learn to connect deeper, weave yogic magic, and lead by example. Full disclosure, I'm still mastering it too, but together we'll skyrocket your impact and income. Hit subscribe and let's grow, one episode at a time. Since 2008, Anthony Chavez has journeyed across the globe, captivating audiences as a leading human performance coach and esteemed yoga instructor and mentor. His approach blends ancient yogic wisdom combined with cutting-edge personal development techniques and real-life experience, the most important part. And Anthony's approach to teaching and coaching emphasizes experience practice over theory. He believes the role of a coach and mentor carries immense responsibility, necessitating real-life experience, application, and tangible results over just theory and education alone. With director-level leadership and training roles at Core Power Yoga and Lifetime Athletic, Anthony has shaped some of the world's leading brands. He's conducted over 7,000 public classes, has led over 25 teacher trainings, and curated numerous international retreats and workshops globally. He's also an accomplished ultra endurance athlete. Anthony's feats include Ironman triathlons, ultra endurance marathons, and cycling events. He once did a 24-hour yoga practice for charity. What? Beyond his professional accolades, he's a devoted husband and father of 4. I mean, where do we even start? The man, the myth, the legend, Anthony Chavez. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, brother.
Oh my God, thank you. What an intro. Holy moly.
No, you brought it all to the table. It's not hard to
Oh,
hype you up with that kind of resume. Seriously, how have you amassed so much success? I mean, I honestly really don't even know where to start, but maybe just with that question, how do you do it all?
that is an incredible question. I think I'm like, let's just start. I guess the answer is probably in part of that intro where I just believe that practicing and putting your life, giving your life to the places that matter most are what drive your life forward, to put it in a nice little bucket. So when I first started practicing, I was the one who I showed up to yoga on a Friday night, first time ever. It's a bunch of women and me, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna win this class. Like that was my mindset. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna win. Walked in with my Jordans on, and then had an experience that changed my life. I was frustrated, I was humbled, I was angry, and then I popped and wept all through Shavasana. Went home not knowing what had happened, just knowing that my world had changed. Woke up the next day and called the studio. I think it was like 15, 16, 17 times until somebody answered and said, hey, I went to class last night and I want to learn how to do this. How can I become a teacher? And I signed up for teacher training less than 24 hours after taking my first class. And that's how it started. But it was like the pouring into my soul spoke to me, my body spoke to me, and I'm like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I just went all in without a lot of reservation.
That's amazing. And I love to hear that it was such a knowing experience. I had a similar experience where I just like once I took the class, I was bit with the bug and immediately
Mhm.
was so obsessed in every single regard. So I love that. And thank you for sharing kind of how yoga found you. How I found you, I feel like it's a funny place to start. We were kind of chatting about it before the recording even began, that the very first time I remember seeing you was at a training that Lifetime, where we both worked at the time, put
Mhm.
on a boga training. Do you remember this?
Oh my goodness, I forgot about that part.
Yes, it was for boga.
I
So
was yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Boga for everyone listening was their kind of grand attempt, I think, at making stand-up paddleboard yoga be a thing. So
Mhm.
Boga was yoga on paddle boards, but in their pool that were strapped to, the lane lines. And that's why we were there. And I remember I was quite young at the time. This must have been, I don't know, maybe 7, maybe even longer
I
ago. So
wanna say it's probably 15 or 16 at the latest, but probably
yeah, yeah.
15.
Yeah, so
2014, 2015. Yeah.
so it's been a while, and I remember just being in this room full of, like, trailblazing teachers, so many teachers that I admired, but you for sure stuck out, and I was like, "This guy just has something so special and is
Mm.
really doing what he's meant to be doing. So it's cool that you felt that taking your very first class, kind of knowing like, hey, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. But just to affirm and encourage you that you are so on the right path and you keep being on the right path, even if that changes, whether it means like leaving one place and going to do a different project. It's almost like you've got Midas's golden touch.
I,
Whatever you touch turns to gold.
well, I thank you, and I just believe it's the longer answer to that first question. It's when you can get really clear on the things that light you up, on where you find fulfillment, on where it feels like you're giving to the planet rather than taking from it, rather than what's in this for me versus like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be, and I'm supposed to give my gifts and talents and skills and pour out. Then it just gets really easy and really clear because there's an abundance of energy. There's an underlying passion. So then I'm like, it kind of doesn't matter because you're living in your zone of genius. And
Mm-hmm.
I could see how everything that you touch from that place does turn to gold because the intention is so clear and the vibes are so aligned.
Mm. Well said. Yeah, so good. So that's where we started, you guys, was looking like Bambi, or at least I did. I feel like you're so good when you're on solid ground, and then you try to do like a
It's so
warrior,
humbling.
a warrior on water, and you're just falling. So we had a good time with that,
We
and I'd
did.
like to think that we've come pretty far since then.
We have, and I love that too. We were talking about it before we started recording, and I think that was the only time we'd ever met in person. So call it a decade or so ago, and we've been able to keep in touch via social media. And it's
Yeah.
interesting because social media gets a bad rap at times, and I get it. But then also, if we use it for good, for moments like this, where cheering you on through the different stages of your life, building a family, building an incredible business, and then vice versa, like it's cool because 10 years later or so, we get to be on this podcast together, continuing to do our work.
Mm-hmm.
But also, it's like, how do I say, when you know, we hung out once, and I remember like laughing super hard in the Lifetime Cafe. I don't remember what. I was just remember we were just like having a blast, probably making fun of ourselves from being in the damn boga class. And then here we are 10 years later, like
Yeah. Yeah.
connected. It's
I
cool.
love
It's
it.
super cool.
I love it so much. And thank you for letting me know how it was from your perspective. Cause sometimes you're like, I know that I like this person and I think that we're friends, but do they think that we're friends? So
Mhm.
it's good to hear that you felt that too. And you have absolutely been such a inspiration to me through everything that you post and the way that you show up online. So keep doing what you're doing. It's important. And people are watching you, whether they're telling you as much, whether they're telling you that they are, people are. So yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
amazing.
Can we share that?
Okay.
Can we double hit that for the teachers? Because I know like
Yeah.
it's hard. It's hard. We get lost back to social in a sea of like uber popular people online. And then we go to our classes and there might be 10 or 15 or whatever people, but like those people are watching. And every time that we show up in the seat of the teacher, like we have an opportunity to impact their lives in a profound way. And I just wanted to hit that. Like I get, we're both on a podcast right now, and if somebody is just starting or they're not comfortable being on camera, just don't forget what Ken said. Like you are making an impact no matter
Mm,
what, even if it's 3 people in their very first yoga class. Like that's what you hold on to. That's the passion. That's again third answer to your very first question, like how we keep this thing so potent and so pure. It's to
mm.
pour yourself out, not to get lost in the sea of um I don't know, some of the comparison parts of the internet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I guess it makes me think of what you're talking about is like the concept of mudita, the yogic way of saying like sympathetic joy or sharing in other people's joy, that you don't have to wait for your own,
Mm-hmm.
especially if things necessarily aren't seemingly happening for you right now. There's always something to celebrate, even if it's another person's success. And that by
Mm-hmm.
celebrating their success, you also get in real time the benefits of happiness by deciding like, hey, I don't have to be in this scarcity mindset. I can be in this place of abundance and realize that when another yoga teacher is really good, more people are being helped and served. And if that's my mission, then we're all winning. It doesn't matter whether like you're doing it or I'm doing it. That up leveling of our society and people finding a little bit of relief from all of their stress, all of their pain. Not to I don't know necessarily what's like you feel like is your calling, but that's a big reason of why I'm doing this is I know that there's a lot of people out there that are sick and tired of hurting, and the
Mhm.
more yoga teachers we have, the better, and the more masterful yoga teachers we have, even better. So I get to just share, and all that you do, it's my success too.
100% aligned. Like this is the right conversation because there's probably even since I think I started this or started teaching in 2009, and it was like even back then, oh, we're saturated. There's too many yoga teachers, blah blah blah, and here we are 15 years later, and like so many more yoga teachers later, and we're still just scratching the surface because the world does need this medicine. Like that's it. Doesn't matter. Like, yes, we're on our journey to become masterful, to become the best versions of ourselves. But then I've also like come to believe that if you're first day one, you're going to help somebody who has never stepped into a room. Like your level of wisdom will help other people regardless of where you're on your path. So that helps the celebration of the joy. And then something that I've been super present with lately is also like it's a continuation of that thought, and it's this word called ani, which is divine reciprocity. So one of my friends is a shaman. We'll link to the show notes her tradition, so we want to make sure and honor her lineage. But basically, it's giving, it's celebrating and giving and showing up and propping up the people in your world so that you're practicing reciprocity, which is that give and receive, but it's under this, they call it divine, like this spiritually clean, karmically aligned, divine version of it. So we not only are celebrating each other's successes, but we're giving to each other. We're highlighting. We're, let's call it in like a real, like brass tacks way, sharing each other's programs and retreats and not worrying that like it's going to take away from me.
Mm-hmm.
It's been
Mm-hmm.
like, here's your stuff, share the podcast, share the thing, and then people are giving. I think that is something really cool to strive for as a yoga teacher, wherever you are on your journey, to not like, these are mine, there's not enough. Oh my God, it drives me nuts.
Yeah, 100% agree. It just feels better. Like when I think about it's either that way or the other way. I'm just like either I'm feeling happy and grateful and inspired, or I'm feeling just caught up, like you said, in comparison, or feeling like this lack mentality or this unworthiness. And when I look at them like
Mhm.
that, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go with this way.
Totally. Can we talk about comparison a little bit?
Yeah, please.
Um, just the other side of my brain is turned on. So, like the peak performance side of my brain, I know that in, call it our yoga world, we're so aligned with this idea of comparison because how's the saying go? Comparison is the thief of joy. There's
Mhm.
this emotional component that makes you feel less than because we judge. I'm not as good. I'm blah, 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 blah. But then when I shift into, okay, how are we actually trying to grow our teaching practices or our businesses? Comparison without the judgment is actually a good thing because if you can look at somebody else's business or practice or craft without the emotional attachment of better or less than, objectively looking at it, then it becomes an opportunity to learn, to say, ooh, this person is really good at this. What can I glean from it? How can I take what they're doing and grow myself as a teacher? If like you're theming or building your retreat business or your podcast, it's like looking at other people, I say it in a different way, and objectively comparing where they are having more success than you. It's an opportunity for you to take what they're doing and learn and grow. It's only when the emotions and the comparison or the judgment of it comes into play, then like that's just not the way to go because now we're unworthy. Now we have all those low states that actually detract us from growing and from serving the world, period. So it's
Mhm.
a, does that distinction make sense?
Yes, yes. Well
Oh,
said.
Oh, and I've got to practice this in like the most realist way. I have a friend who I led her training a decade ago, and she's gone on to build an incredible studio and brand. And there's things that she's doing that I am like not good at. So, in the journey of our relationship, I was her mentor. And then today, she is now mentoring me. And it's like so cool because it's one part divine reciprocity, but it's also me being like, on one hand, I could be like, oh, I'm the mentor, and compare and get judgy and get weird about where she is just like doing incredible things. And of course, like feelings come up, that's normal. But then we pause, we breathe, we do our practice. And I'm like, actually, let me reach out. Hey, would you be down to like coach me and mentor me and teach me these things? And she was like, oh my God, yes. And then I'm learning and growing so much. But it was because of that distinction where we like get out of the hierarchy system and just be like, what are you doing that is awesome? I want to learn, and vice versa.
I love that. And I had the same experience with my now, or my really, she's my business mentor slash coach, but also now my partner for Rachaka retreats. She took my yoga teacher training. And then when shutdown happened, I reached out to her
Mm-hmm.
because that's kind of what she took yoga teacher training for, was to infuse it in her spiritual and energetic business for helping other people start their businesses. And so, yeah, I had the same sort of thing, as like realizing that you can be a mentor to coach to somebody in a specific area, but everybody's so multidimensional and everybody has so many skills. And just because you're helping them with one little like shade or aspect of your life doesn't mean that you are like their all encompassing guru, and that we can always learn from each other. That's really, really cool.
Mm. I love it. I
And
love how deep we're getting, like right away.
oh,
It's
yeah,
such a
yeah.
good, because then it keeps people human. It keeps people humble. It keeps
Mhm.
us learning and growing and not like getting our heads too big.
Yeah,
And you get
yeah.
to see people like
Mhm.
with all their flaws and all their greatness. Like, okay, cool. You're awesome here. And like, you kind of suck here. And like, same. How do
Mhm.
we hold each other's hands and get closer to what we're trying to create?
Do you spend hours agonizing over yoga sequences, desperately seeking inspiration to keep your classes fresh and engaging? You're not alone. Designing dynamic flows to cater to different abilities and goals can be a time consuming challenge for even the most seasoned yoga teachers. The Pose Bible is here to save the day. It's your roadmap to effortless sequence creation. This comprehensive resource is a goldmine of yoga poses, categorized by breadth, family, difficulty, benefits, and so much more. This will help you spend less time planning and more time teaching. Impress your students with diverse and creative sequences. Feel confident knowing you're offering a well rounded yoga experience for all. Always feel prepared with 10 done for you sequences. Get your copy today for only $13 and transform your yoga teaching. This includes downloadable 85-page PDF valued at $97, 10 done for you flows valued at $27, everything you need to stop stressing and start sequencing. Value priceless. Stop wasting precious time on sequence creation. Get the Pose Bible today for only $13 and reclaim your energy for what matters most, inspiring your students. The link is in the show notes. Another thing that you said that made me remember a conversation I was having with a student. And I found it really fascinating. And I ended up like mulling it over in my mind for a couple of days. And I'd be interested to hear your opinion. We were kind of saying, we were talking about judgment and thinking, okay, what is the difference between judgment and discernment? And we kind
Mm-hmm.
of ended up saying, like, judgment is usually where all of our issues come from, because whereas judgment has sort of that negative aspect or connotation,
Mm-hmm.
discernment is really what we're actually trying to have, because in judgment you can either like look at something and analyze something, but judgment has that addition of putting some sort of like emotional context on it, whereas discernment is like it just is the fact without my feelings necessarily tethered to it. And so I feel like as people in general, but especially as yoga teachers, we are trying to evolve and grow our ability of discernment more so than judgment, because I believe, at least, there's so many paths to the same destination.
Mhm.
It doesn't really matter like how you get there as long as you get there. And really masterful yoga teachers are aware of that, and they're able to tailor the way that they teach to meet the student not only where they're at, but like plus some, to bring them to that destination in the way that resonates with them the most, like based on their learning style. So what do you think of that, of like difference between discernment and judgment, and how we can use that to help us not be in that comparison trap?
I flippin' love it. I do. I think it's the elevation of it. Discernment also indicates, or it infers, that you have a set of values or boundaries that you've put together in your life that you're either willing or non-willing to have. That's like the stickiness of discernment for me. It's that I've gotten so clear on what matters to me, on what I'm allowed, on what willing to accept and not accept. It's value driven, it's heart driven, it's mission driven rather than all the other stuff that happens. It's a big, big deal.
Boom. I'm just trying to like wrap my brain around this whole.
No, I know. It's like
Yeah. That, I mean, that's everything. And I feel like you in particular have so much experience in your vault, especially working with yoga teachers, being in the positions that you've been in, with core power and with lifetime of like being in huge leadership roles. So with that in mind, what do you usually see is like the common pitfalls or like the biggest struggles for yoga teachers? Is it this comparison trap and this mentality of not really understanding the difference between judgment and discernment, or what would you say is the common denominator that you see most often?
I I would say some of it's comparison, but a lot of it has to do with just not believing that they belong, and then also not owning their true voice.
Hmm.
And that's normal. Like, you are inspired by somebody, we take your training, and there's always going to be a little bit of Ken's in my teaching if you were my teacher. Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the inability to actually be free and to be authentic and to stand for what you believe in and to teach from that place.
Hmm.
It's like this battle of like, who am I going to be? Once teachers figure that out and they get real and they get authentic, it's been my experience that I see them flourish in whatever lane they're going to be in. But that first part is kind of, it takes a lot of work. Like, who am I? And you know that that's this, so much of teacher training is about finding out who you are anyway. It's about unlearning all the stuff that isn't real for you and stepping into what is. So I would say it's that. It's then that's where the comparison comes in. If I'm putting it together, because I don't know who I am and I'm not being authentic and I'm trying to be like this person, and am I doing it right or wrong, versus just like owning who you are
Hmm.
100%, the good stuff and the not so good stuff, and like letting it rip from there. And then the other one, and I'm just huge on this, is just straight up practicing. I get this question the most, like, how did you become X, Y, and Z? How did you get good at this? And I'm like, I just practiced. I had a class scheduled for the day of my teacher training and graduation. I was teaching in people's apartments. Like, we would press couches out of the way. There'd be four of us in there, put the heater on. I would send recordings to my mentors. Even a year later, when I was managing a studio at Core Power, I would drive across town to take my mentor's class and to adjust and to learn. So I just stayed in that seat. And at the same time, I had another senior teacher who I would pay. I'd have to buy her like coffee and croissants, but she would take my Saturday class, and I, yeah, give her food to take my class, but she would just feed back the crap out of me
Hmm.
every single class. And there'd be, it's a packed house, and she'd be in there practicing, and we'd go next door and I'd get the coffee, and she'd be like, boom, let's go, and just hammer me. So I just kept doing the work, kept honing my craft, even until this day, 15 years later. taking an after action report in almost every class. What worked well? What could have done better? It's just keeping this focus on constant and never ending growth. Not for me, for the role of the teacher.
Mm.
We talked about it a little bit earlier about how every time you're in that seat, you never know like how impactful or profound it can be for somebody. So before every class I teach, I keep that in mind. And again, 7-ish thousand classes later, I'm like, this is going to be the best class I've ever taught for the people in the room so that they can receive what they need. Like, not about me. I want them to get the experience that yoga has the potential to offer. And if I'm not dialed, if I'm not present, if I'm not giving my all, if I haven't prepared, then I would rob them of that opportunity potentially. So it's showing up with that much. It's like not mailing it in. It's
Mm.
just all coming.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so many things. What I'm hearing from you is as far as like honing your craft as a yoga teacher, the most important thing is to just practice. And I love how you even said it in your bio, and I feel like you are a living walking example of this, that experience practice over theory is more important, like just in the doing, just in the doing. And any type
Mhm.
of doing, even if that doing includes mess ups and failures, that's all part of the beautiful process that makes you into the refined package, like at the end of the day. um, and then the next thing is having some sort of like bird's eye view in the form of like a coach or a mentor that's helping you see your blind spots, how important that is for you as a teacher if you're really, really serious about taking your
Mhm.
teaching to the next level and elevating your offerings. So I'm so glad you spoke to that. But where I really want to specifically narrow in on is other specific ways that people can find sort of their authenticity. And I think you wrote it as like you're honing your craft and your ability of theming and authenticity. What do you have for yoga teachers as far as that?
Authenticity. It's, I mean, we could, this is a weekend conversation.
Yeah,
This is something we should host together. We should
let's
just
do
put
it.
on a weekend intensive for authenticity and theming.
Hmm.
But I think it's the practice itself. It's, it's Chitti Vritti Narodaha. So
Hmm.
it's pulling out the voices and getting honest about who you are, about what fulfills you, about what your life is, about what it's been, and starting from that place. It's starting from the inside and not the outside. Uh, you said like the misses, and I'm like, yes. Oftentimes when I get on stage, when I'm like, something I share is that I've made every mistake a 45-year-old man can make. And this is where it comes from. That's experience practice. I didn't say experience wins. It's just living. So
Hmm.
it's your ability to own your embarrassments, to own the parts of you that you hide, to take radical ownership of not only your light, but of the stuff that you just don't put on social. If you can do that, that's the real, oh, that's where the nectar comes from.
Hmm.
Because then you're not faking any of it. You're like, this is just me. This is me. This is what you get. I'm a dad. I'm a grandfather now. I'm an ultra endurance athlete. I'm a husband. I'm a goofball. I'm serious. I cry. I also mess up a lot, and not to be ashamed from any of it, but to bring
Hmm.
it all to the table of your work. I would say start there and not from the outside. I think that's a lot of teachers as they get going or as they're leveling up, again, are looking to the outside and they're trying to bolt on. They're trying to become something rather than saying, what's here? What's inside? What have I lived? Where have I suffered? Where have I thrived? And can I build on to that?
Hmm. Great advice. I had this experience kind of recently, maybe not necessarily in the arena or the conversation of authenticity or theming, but the experience that you're talking about was the same, of feeling like I was really quote unquote bad at something, that I didn't
Mhm.
have the skills at something, that it felt like such a struggle. Every time I went to go do this thing, it felt painful. But really, what it was is I was like so close to being really, really good at that thing, I felt, I mean, I have no other way to describe it other than like constipated. I felt
Yeah.
bloated with ideas, like,
Ready to pop.
yes, ready to absolutely just explode into this thing that I really wanted to do. And it took one coach, one mentor to say it in one way that then made it all click. And then once I
Mhm.
understood kind of like that method, it was just like so many things flowed out of me because it was actually just like steam rising, like on a kettle that you put
Mhm.
on the stove top, and it starts to bubble and it starts to boil, and then it's inevitable that that kettle is going to start singing at some moment, but it's like all that gas just had to kind of like accumulate. And so that's
Totally.
what that's
You
what
gotta
you're
keep the heat
talking
on,
about.
though.
Yeah, you got to
It
keep the heat
is.
on. It's true.
And this
Yeah.
is where, like, okay, most people won't they will take the heat off, they'll back off, they'll quit. Or I'm like a huge Florence and the Machine fan, and to quote her, "It's always darkest before the dawn." It's
Yeah.
that same thing. And then there's also just this thing called momentum, where in the beginning it's hard and it sucks and you go, but then it starts to take a life of its own. But
Mm,
oh, keep the pressure on. We're both power vinyasa teachers at our like origins, let's
mm,
say. And I still stick to that. I just love that the intensity of the asana and the pressure of it will get you out of your head and into your body, where then you start to get real honest with yourself.
mm.
And now that pressure, you're like less constipated, but you start to see it from a different place. We get it out. We get it out. My meditation teacher says better out than in. And I'm like, I love that. I love that. Like, get it out and then we can play. Then we can go to work. But I think, like, to put it in the frame of the mastering your craft, it's people let up beforehand, or they
Mm,
don't put the heat high enough. They don't let it boil, to use your analogy. And it's
mm,
just like really hot, uncomfortable water. And that doesn't do much in the space of transformation. You got to step
mm.
through it, baby.
Yeah. So for all of you that are out there listening and you're feeling like authenticity or theming or whatever it is that you feel like you're not good at it and you've been struggling for a while, it might just be we're here to encourage you that you might just be right on that precipice, right on that breaking point
Mhm.
of really figuring it out and that things will click. Just keep at it, baby. Keep at it.
Yeah. Then give a quick, simple formula for theming too. And it's to take your life, the experiences, your wins, your joys, your heartbreaks, and I run it through a couple of filters. Uh, if you're taking notes, it's like from me to we,
Mm.
from we to us, and from us to all.
Ooh.
If my lived experience can move through that, it's filtered enough to share. From me to we to us to all. Do you want to do it live with me, like a quick hitting one for the teachers?
Do it. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So, big event in your life that just happened the last couple of years.
Having a baby.
Great. That's exactly what I was thinking. Okay. Having a baby. Can you, and this is how you check and start. Maybe I'm going to get more detailed on theming, then it doesn't matter. This is how you can check and start. You ask yourself, all right, if I said, Ken's, I'm going to go grab some more coffee, no prep, can you talk about your experience of having a baby for 3 hours without stopping?
Yes.
100%. It's in there. So this is what I mean, like, start inside. It's real for you. You've lived it. You've breathed it. There's a whole gamut of emotions. So now we're going to take that and say, okay, filter one is, what are some of the lessons that you learned from having a baby?
Okay, I can answer.
Yeah, we're just going to do, like, in a normal workshop, we would take a lot more time, but you can take the time during the podcast, press pause, and like do it longer. So, question one, what are some of the lessons you learned?
Okay. So I think I'm gonna zero in on the actual experience of giving birth. I gave birth unmedicated at home in a birthing tub. And I remember going through this experience and, of course, like leaning into my yoga practice, but much more than I thought, and also unexpected ways. And I feel like there was like three things that during that experience I kind of had more aha moments or realizations and revelations. The first was that there's two sides of a contraction. There's the squeeze, but then there's also the release. And that if I could kind of focus more on that release side, then I was able to manage my own pain better and also be in the game longer. That was kind of my first insight.
Actually, pause it for a second.
Okay.
Okay, so that's one. Let me ask you a different question. How many lessons, how many insights did you gain from the birthing experience?
Probably, I mean, tons, but I feel like ones that I can think of right now are three main ones.
So for teachers out there, what I had her do first was find a time in her life that was impactful, either really joyful or really hard, and share the story. So she wrote down the story. She shared the story with us. And then she started to say, okay, what did I glean from this story? And we've got one big insight right now so far. And then there's two more. So as you're theming, as you're putting together your thoughts, know that these big moments in your life can be the source of multiple themes, of multiple shares, of multiple lessons. That's why I started with saying, can you go for 3 hours? And she was like, buckle up, baby. We can do this all day, because the fire, the fuel, the juice is there. On the flip side, what you would try to avoid is to start from the outside. So if there's a cool post or a saying or a quote, if you try to build your class on that, it's shallow. There's
Mhm.
not a lot of lived experience in it, and then it falls flat. And we've all been there, like the teacher just saying the same thing 5,000 times, or like they read the quote, like, yeah,
Broken
like the
record. Broken record
broken
syndrome.
record.
Yeah.
That's not what we're doing. This helps solve that, because there's so much fuel and juice and everlasting power that is coming from a deep emotional place.
I love that you're walking me through it and like making it a real time workshop because it's going to help so many yoga teachers kind of grasp the point. I particularly love how you're making it about the specifics, and that the specifics is the spice that we're kind of looking for. Like, is that secret sauce that distinguishes somebody who's like kind of doing it and then somebody who's like really doing it well when it comes to theming or infusing some of these meaningful messages. It comes from that place of lived experience, but it's like specific, and it's in those specifics that it becomes like spicy and interesting because it's uniquely yours.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
It's real, right? This is one of the big paths to authenticity. You all, if you're 21 and you've taught one class, or you're 85 and have taught a million, you have a life, you have an experience, you have highs and lows. This is the medicine that you get to share for the people in your room. Now, of course, there's a way to do it. You're not going to walk in and like vomit on people, and I'm sure you've covered that. That's a whole
Oh.
different topic. So that's why I'm like saying there's a filter. Okay, so tell me again, it was what and release?
There's two sides of a contraction. There's the squeeze
Uh-huh.
and the release.
Squeeze. Can't read my writing. The squeeze and the release.
Mm.
Great. So now you're like, okay, it's distilled down. What wisdom is there? What did you learn
Mm.
from the ability to play the opposites, to squeeze and to release, to contract and to
Mm.
surrender?
Yeah, that there's always room for me to relax. And this one phrase, I'm kind of a sucker for phrases and I love like rhymes. I love things to sound kind of poetic, but it was something to the effect of every exhalation is an invitation for relaxation.
Mm.
And that is available to me all the time,
Hmm.
even in something like birth. That like you have no choice but to breathe in an experience like that. And by at the same time, like your body is doing it with or without you,
Hmm.
especially those contractions. So as long as I let the intensity kind of be there, but also really leaned into the surrender side of it and kind of acknowledged like my body is going to do this with or without me. And as long as I keep breathing and leaning into that exhale side, I'm actually kind of getting out of the way, which, especially when it comes to authenticity, that's actually what it feels more like, or at least to me, being authentic feels like not trying as hard as I thought I had to. You know, it's
Hmm.
so natural. You are it. So you don't have to try to be it because you are it. And so I think like it's a whole lot easier than we think it is. And what trips us up is when we try to make it harder.
That's it. Okay, friends, everybody listening. So we started with this very deeply personal story, have taken it through a couple of filters. Can you now see the genesis or the heartbeat of an incredibly powerful class? And without getting too much into the weeds, where can she start to talk about your ability to embrace the intensity, to not hide from it, that there's a relaxation behind every inhale? Like, what section of class can that show up? Where does the through line or the sutra, the thread, start to go from the beginning of class to the very first breath to the end of it, without getting into her story? But there's power there. And now we can start to add the outside on. Is there yogic wisdom and philosophies and sutras that do mirror exactly what you're saying?
100%.
100%. So now we start to take the outside and bolt onto your experience. And it doesn't even have to be yoga. And then it can be other forms of personal development, other books, other quotes, even what it's not. You can even bring an awareness to when people are not surrendering, are only in the contraction, are not breathing, are not allowing themselves to be breathed. So you start to get this lesson from all different angles and use every great faith-based tradition to stack it up and to support it. So
Mm.
as you move to class, you have this real lived experience, and then there's just little tidbits of the story that you add along the way that are all different and supporting the same thread, which is just your authenticity. We're doing the turbo version of this formula, but
Yeah, I'm like, wow, way to make it really easy, really quick. That was so awesome. Can you say the filters one more time? So it's me to we, and then what is it?
me to we to us to all. So me to we is like, this is just how my brain works. It's like, it's just my thing, but then we is like me and you. And
Mhm.
then us would be 4 or 5 people, 10 people in a room at a party. And then if it can get through that filter to the world, to
Mm.
humanity, that's all. There's another section in there. There's a couple of other questions that we can add, but those are the filters. And as we go, it's like you take out your lesson. Think about, who would you be had you not learned this lesson? So you replay the story of birth without this. How could it have gone differently? Those are nuggets that you get to pull, that you get to prep people. These are how you identify blind spots in your own life. Next layer in of question can be, it's this is kind of my favorite one, because this is how you cap the theme, is what does the world look like once everybody has learned this? So we'll just do this one live. Let's say everybody really understands in their heart, like, you've served your mission, you got on Oprah, like whoever, you did the thing, everybody on the planet heard you, and they are now living and breathing the ability to contract and to release. They understand the concept. What's the outcome?
Probably a lot less stressed. Is the first thing that kind of comes to the surface is when you get better at surrendering to the process and remembering to relax, there's just a lot less dis-ease. So yeah, that's what I think.
Okay, and then if people are less stressed, and you can dig in a little bit, if there's less disease, what does life look like for them? What's the quality of their life? How do they feel? What's the experience of being a human being? See your face lighting up, like, this is it. Keep going. Share it.
Yeah, they feel lighter, they feel happier, they feel like all of those things that used to feel in the way aren't obstacles or roadblocks anymore, and they have a lot more energy to do what they want to do.
Boom. Love it. Love it. Love it. Okay, so tie it up. This is the story of her birth. And then in the experience of the class as a student, you're going to learn how to stress less, how to feel lighter, how to be
Mhm.
happier, how to have more energy, how to embrace the suck, as I call it, the surrender, the release, the endurance. I'm like, this is an entire year.
Yeah,
And it's also not, what did you call it? The broken record syndrome, but it's the same thing.
yeah.
And then personally, I do love this, again, many paths. Thank you for saying that. I actually wrote that down before we started. I'm like, I want to make sure that we talk about, like,
Wow.
there's no one right. Like, we find liberation the way we find it.
Yes.
So, like, this is just what I love as a teacher, that if we get to the end of that class and we like sat 10 people in a row and be like, cool, what was the theme about? If somebody says finding more energy. And then somebody over here says the ability to endure. It's
Mm,
the same class, but they're taking what resonated most with them through your lived, weaved experience rather than just love more, love, I mean, whatever
yeah,
the
right.
broken record is. It's like open enough that you can have 10 different answers and they were all in the energy of what you shared via this filter. For me,
Mm,
that's a win. I'm like, cool. Y'all were in the same class, right? I wasn't saying different shit to you all. And then, it's
see,
for me, that's like
see,
how it, uh-huh.
it's just so brilliant. It's so brilliant and it's so simple. And I feel like that's another sign of a masterful teacher. And Anthony, you just made it so sweet and simple. And I really love, I think, like you said, you were like, this is my favorite part, is really that last step of contemplating after you've done this work of like distilling all of these bigger ideas into tiny bite-sized pieces. Then it's like how it really lands everybody. And this is the part that I feel like is missing when teachers try to theme, is that what you did at the end of like, what would either the world look like if everybody adopted this concept? And I think of it as like, when you're theming or you're trying to imbue these meaningful messages, it's almost like you're this, I hate to say like salesman for yoga,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like sales have that icky connotation of like trying to get somebody to buy something. But really, when you're a yoga teacher and when you're a yoga teacher that's theming, you're kind of like trying to get more people to buy into a yogic lifestyle. And you're
Mm-hmm.
presenting like a salesman, like, look at here, all the things you could have if you decided to take this concept and use it in your life. If you bought into it,
Mm-hmm.
this is like how it would help you like not be that second step that you did. You were like, what would I look like if I didn't take this journey?
Mm-hmm.
Or if I did decide to apply this like little nugget of gold or seed of wisdom into my life, like what would I glean and gain from it? And what would the world like at large gain from it? That's how it becomes like actually inspiring. And at the same time, totally universal.
Mm-hmm. I love that you said totally universal because I think that's really important. That's the all part.
Mhm.
To be able to share things that do speak to humanity regardless of their background or tradition or faith, anything. That's like kind of the beauty in this thing. I've had people come up to me after class, after like, I always knew you were Jewish. And I'm like, awesome, love you. Next week, I always knew you were Buddhist. Thank you for sharing that. Like, wink, wink.
Yeah.
Right. I knew you were a devout Christian. Like, people have shared their things with me and they're like, I see what you're doing. I know what you're doing. Like, and I'm just like, these are truths.
Mhm.
And when you can distill it down in a way that is universal, then it'll meet people where they're at in their own language. And part of it is just a belief for me. I believe all these great faith-based traditions, their messaging is so similar. Like, we're all trying to lift each other up and to love each other. So when you can get that clear, that distilled, as you said, then you just meet people where they're at, and you've got people walking around thinking that we're part of every different club, and you're like, great, live your best life.
It's great. It's making me think of, I feel like it's from, is it from the Bhagavad Gita? I can't remember. If anybody that's listening remembers where this is from, please remind me. But it's the Sanskrit phrase "ekam shat vipraha bahuda vedanti," and it means one truth, many paths, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of the whole thing that we're really talking about here, is that there's so many ways to get to the same place, and something that distinguishes mastery is being able to know what that destination is so authentically, so deeply, that it doesn't matter how somebody gets there, just that they get there, and that you can help them in their own unique path from
Mm-hmm.
their vantage point get there. So that's really, really cool. Thank you so much for taking us through your formula for theming and making it like a real it kind of put me on the spot. I felt like I was in the hot seat.
Yeah, a little bit, but it's easy. That's the thing. Like, of course, in a real live version, you want to take your time and answer these questions, and we
Yeah.
can always do more together on it. But you got the snapshot of it. You take something that's real and you get it to a place where you can share with the world. And then of course you can share your personal stories as long as they're in service of the people. There's a
Mm,
difference between talking about yourself because you want to talk about yourself versus sharing your life in a way that helps others be brave and vulnerable and step into what's possible for them.
mm,
That's where, again, back to that realness and that authenticity. Like last year, there was a lot of times where I was like really talking about how things change. And I'm doing this because this is now more white than it was black. And that was like a very vulnerable, like, whoa, bodies are changing. Okay, how do we turn this into something that the world needs to experience? And then as you're going through it, and you have your conversation with students and you're just talking, and I'm like, yeah, this is real for me. I'm having a really hard time with my face turning more white than black. And then you get the really cool, and I think this is where the rubber hits the road for authenticity and for vulnerability. It's like, oh my God, me too. Thank you
mm,
for sharing something like that that's so personal. I just became a grandfather 4 months ago and it's
mm.
incredible. But then I'm also like, what is happening? What is going on?
Yeah.
And so when people feel like they have permission from the teacher, from the person who's just as human as they are, to feel the things, to be authentic themselves, it creates this really cool container for growth in all directions. It
Wow.
really is like this ripple effect of permission and authenticity.
Mm.
So back to the top though, if you're starting from in an authentic place or you haven't quite found it yet, or you're using Instagram as the source of your theming, it's going to fall flat. People are going to feel it, and we'll be doing ourselves a disservice.
I hope that everybody feels now that they have tangible tips to not do that of going from the outside in. So thank you so much for sharing that. And
Mhm.
really, really quickly, I'm glad that you brought up kind of more of just like life and family and becoming a grandfather. Um, the one thing that I really wanted to ask you, that's kind of how I started, was like, how do you do it all? Because as somebody who just recently became a mom and you are a father of four, which I don't understand,
Yeah.
how do you balance like work and life and career and family? And I particularly wanted to make sure that I point out, I love the way that you speak about your partner. And is there any other tips that you would have just for yoga teachers? Because I know a lot of yoga teachers, they are doing this as their career, but some of them maybe it's more of just a full time or a part time thing rather than a full time thing. And
Mhm.
how can we do this great balancing act, not just of life, but in teaching yoga?
Thank you. I'm like, girl, you asked the biggest question with at the very end. Are we doing this for 2 hours?
I wish we need to do a part
Great
two for sure.
extended episode.
Yeah.
Uh, I'll put it into a really clear, succinct way. It's to get clear on your intentions, uh, to really know that what's important to you, what you value. We talked about this, and then to check in with how you feel about those things, your energetic state, being happy, being sad, being excited. That either gives you energy or takes energy away. So if you have an intention to be a good father and husband, and when I think about it, I'm excited, I'm inspired, I'm fired up, then I'm going to give to that. And that makes the actions for that really easy. So I try to align my life with things that I'm inspired by, that I'm fired up with, because it all becomes this fulfilling give. Being on here with you is a give. It's giving me energy. It's giving me hope and love for the future and for the next generation of yoga teachers, our generation of yoga teachers, the current, whoever. And so the balance part is kind of gets tricky because it's just like sleeping. We don't sleep 12 and are awake 12. There's different levels of it. So if we can remove the actual constraints of what does balance look like and focus more on the energy exchange,
Mhm.
then it gets very real. And I could just use the kids as an example. Being at home with them over the weekend, but being not fully present, being off the phone, messing around is radically different than saying, I only got 6 hours and then daddy's hitting the road to lead a training. Those 6 hours are more impactful for them and for me and for my family than the 48 hours of just messing around. So that's what I mean by intention and presence. If you're like clear on what matters and you pour yourself into it and it's bringing you love and inspiration, then the actions just kind of take care of themselves. And that gives me the results that I'm looking for in my life. On the other side, when I'm engaged in actions that are a take, that are draining me, that are not fulfilling me, that's when I pause and look at my calendar and change things up because then I'm out of balance. Like I just believe that we have an abundance of energy. This is partly why I do these crazy ultra endurance events. You can go forever if a couple of boxes are ticked off. On the other hand, you can have all the resources in the world, all the right smart goals in the world, and if you're not aligned head, heart, and soul, it's going to be an uphill battle and it's going to suck. And then you're going to hit it. And then it's kind of back to what you were saying before, that momentum, all that, you're just never going to get there. So I would say look at your life, audit your life. What matters? What's important? What are my intentions there? What is giving me, what's the energetic state around it? What actions do I need to take? And then how can I integrate? Integration is also actually really important. It's full circle. That's the practice of. Too many people, I think, especially now, will go from training to book to book to thing and like not actually sit with what they learned and not integrate it. So like sit with it, integrate it, put the practices in. This is a big answer. So I said we need another hour, but
We do. I'm
the
like,
balance
maybe.
the balance is joy and fulfillment. It's joy
Yeah.
and fulfillment, and it's also letting yourself off the hook that it's not equal. It's not 12 hours of sleep and 12 hours of being awake. That's like the easiest way to think about it. There's moments, and there's sometimes it skews this way, sometimes it skews this way, and that's just life. As long as you're aligned, then it's there. And there's seasons too where some things are more important than others. I think, yeah, this is a lot of the other, call it the peak performance work that I help people navigate, especially teachers. We talked about in the beginning, like I spent a bulk of my career really supporting and being in leadership for these big companies. And 2 years ago, I shifted to the teachers. And not that I never was, because it was always, training roles and that's how we met. But like, how can I help people who are living their dharma, who are living their purpose, create more balance so that they're not teaching 30 classes a week and like living in sweaty clothes? How
Yeah.
can we take these gifts and passion and skills and help people find more balance, with more success, with more time freedom, with more money? Like that's been the real game for me for teachers over the last couple of years. And I mean, this is the first time I get to share it. You'll see it by the time this airs. I've taken the last 15 years of my work as a yoga teacher and as a personal development instructor, as a coach for executives, for companies, and put together a program designed with yoga teachers in mind to certify them to become coaches so that they can take all the learnings, all the skills, all their gifts and talents, and help them build a life of balance with more money. I just ran the beta program, and a couple of the gals are already making six figures doing more of what they love. And it's like, this is always right. It's always a pain point for me. I'm like, we go through all these trainings, we pour our heart and soul out, and there's not enough of the value exchange happening. So I was like, all right, cool. Let's build a program so that, like, if your typical teacher's in front of 40 or 100 people a week, there's going to be a few people in there who are like, Ken's, you are changing my life. I want more. And my prayer was that I would give them the structure and the tools and the formulas to help them work with those people one-on-one with everything that they've already learned so that they can go out and like find that balance. This is just a really good example of the question. I'm like, cool, that fills me up. Serving my community, helping people find it, gives me balance because I'm not like tired. I could do this and talk about this stuff all day long because it's like in alignment. Just like, look at all the work you've done as a new mother, pouring into this podcast, creating your program is hard, but not soul sucking. Hard, like being a parent, but like the highest calling. This is how you stay balanced, clear on what matters. Ditch the stuff that doesn't. Delete, get rid of it, free yourself up, say no more, say yes to the things that matter. My coach put me on a program that was called Be an FES. If I wasn't a full FES, then I had to say no. And my life cleared up a lot. And then that gave me the time freedom for my kids, for my wife, for all of it. And it's been the biggest gift of my life.
Good stuff. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for taking us just on the journey, like a full journey, but still also giving very actionable advice within that. I really do think we have to at some point have a whole other episode for like your peak performance, your leadership stuff, the ultra athlete side of it. So I'm going to slide into your DMs again.
Dude, let's do it again. I love you and I love this. And again, I think I said it, but if not, like I am so honored to be in communication with you, in relationship with you, and just thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing your gifts and talents with the world, because we need it. We need it, especially yoga teachers. We are given everything we have, and we need all the support that we can get. So, like, I will cheer you on forever.
Oh, well, back at you, brother. Thank you. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I know everybody got so much out of this episode. Would you mind sharing with my audience how they can plug into your network?
Yes. Probably the easiest is through social media. So Instagram is at Anthony Chavez Yoga. And then my website is prolificpersonaldevelopment.com. We'll just stick with those two. And then my phone number's on there. Like however you want to connect, I'm available. I just want to help y'all grow and get the most out of this one precious life that we've been gifted.
I'm going to link everything in the show notes. Please connect with Anthony. He has so much more to share. Thank you again for sharing your genius. And thank you, dear listeners, for continuing to grow as you go by tuning in to MYYT each and every week. Until next time, namaste blessed. Thanks for listening. If this is your first time, peruse our feed to see if there's something else that will serve you. We're so grateful that you're here and invite you to join our inner circle by subscribing to our newsletter. If this episode resonated with you, help us spread the word by sending it to a friend who needs to hear this message. Likes, follows, sends, shares, and reviews help us to continue delivering high-quality content to you for free each and every week. Don't forget to tag at Master Your Yoga Teaching so we can reshare. I am a certified yogi. However, this podcast is intended for information and entertainment only. If you are interested in mentorship or coaching with me, check out the website linked in the show notes to get more information. This content and other content produced by CLW Studios and affiliated partners is not therapy, and nothing in this content indicates a therapeutic relationship. Any opinions of guests on the podcast are their own and do not represent the opinions of MAKENZIE or CLW Studios. Learn more about MAKENZIE, her guests, and CLW Studios by following the links in the show notes. Keep shining, and we will see you next Wednesday for another dose of Master Your Yoga Teaching. Namaste blessed. Forget the overwhelm of tech tools and expensive software. I'm here to introduce you to FG Funnels, the game changer that transformed my yoga teaching career. What is FG Funnels? A female-owned and operated all-in-one platform that lets you build beautiful landing pages and sales funnels to attract new students and sell your offerings like workshops, retreats, or online courses. Create captivating email sequences to nurture leads and convert them into loyal yogis. Track your results with detailed analytics to see what's working and what's not. I truly believe in FG Funnels, and my experience with FG Funnels has been nothing short of amazing. My student base has doubled since I started using it. My income has grown significantly thanks to efficient sales funnels. I save countless hours thanks to automation and easy management. And best of all, I feel more connected to my students through personalized communication. Ready to experience FG Funnels magic for yourself? Click the link in the show notes to get started and save money by becoming a founding member. Don't wait. Invest in your yoga business and watch it blossom with FG Funnels. Happy marketing!